But before all of that, we're going to turn to Sunday's All-Ireland football final. It's Dublin up against Kerry, and it's Croke Park, and I'm delighted to say we're joined on the line by former Mayo footballer Yvonne Byrne. Good morning, Yvonne.
Morning, Adrian. Morning, Shane. How are you?
Flying, thanks. Yeah, we've been reading obviously a good bit of the previews over the last little while. Nice bit of juice flowing here between either camp. You have sort of Declan Quill saying, I mean, he might have been a little bit tongue-in-cheek to give him his dues, but he was saying all the pressure's on Dublin here, you know, particularly after the men's win. And then you've Mick Bowen saying that Kerry are a very physical team. So certainly if the build-up is set to go by, we're set for a good game.
Yeah, it's great, and it's great to see the mind games going as well. It doesn't happen that often in the women's game, but it's in full flow here for the All-Ireland final with Mick and the two boys. And I think Mick started it off. They were just off the pitch after their win against Cork in the semi-final, and he was saying how Kerry were a dirty team, and the two boys came out fighting anyway and said they weren't a dirty team and they're physical. But I think that's Mick. We played them in 2017 decider, and he was at it before then as well with the ref and Cora, and he was kind of getting the narrative out there. And look, he's looking for that day didn't make a difference because they hammered us off the pitch. But you know, in a tight game, kind of, I suppose he's putting it out there for the ref. Maybe in a tight game, you could sway the ref one way or another. But I think with two physical teams here, I think what's happening is both camps are just setting out their stall and they're making sure no one's kind of getting an inch before the match is thrown in, and it's great to see. It adds to the excitement and the preview of the matches for sure.
Fair bit made, like, to on the point about the physicality, because, like, look, there is a bit of tongue-in-cheek at that stuff and everybody sort of knows I'll throw this grenade out here and it'll slightly defect from this thing over here, but the physicality is kind of an interesting one maybe to get into a little bit, and it did pay off for Kerry in that June game. They were physical, they were putting a lot of pressure on that player in possession at times, and they forced a lot of turnovers. Like, it'd be hard to foresee a situation that they won't double down on that approach on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely, and we've seen the success Meath have got the last 2 years because of that. Like, as in, Dublin brought a physicality to the game, and they play very much on the edge. Meath came and they brought an extra level, and they took over for the last 2 years, and they brought right on the edge of the game. And Kerry have come this year, and maybe it's something Kerry were lacking the last couple of years, was that physicality and matching teams for that. And they've said that themselves, that the strength, condition and the effort they've put in over the last number of years, it's been there to be seen, and they're playing within the parameters of the game. And absolutely, I expect them to go all guns blazing on Sunday and to double down on that, as you said. But Dublin will be well able to match them, and it's up to Dublin, I guarantee, will be looking at the last 2 years when they've missed out on All-Ireland's, something they've been working on also. So I do expect it to be a real physical game. Two good footballing sides, two physical sides, and the game has gone that way, and you know what, it's all the better for it. The girls now are, you know, the strength condition have done, it's been taken to another level the last few years. So I think it makes for a good spectacle as well. Like,
it'll be important for the referee to let it flow, and you don't want to get into too much sort of like pressure on the ref and all that sort of stuff. And hopefully it's totally irrelevant. But like, there is certainly in the back of your mind that little bit of, if the referee gets very picky about this, it could end up spoiling the contest almost.
Yeah, so Shane Curley, the ref from Galway, and look, I do think he'll let it go, and hopefully he will for a neutral point of view. I hope he'll let it go and let us see a good game of football. Other than that, it could be ruined, as in it could be free after free, and the game not flowing at all. We don't really want to see that, but all eyes will be on the referee, and I think Mick and the two lads have probably put it that way as well, with the narrative put out this week in their previews. But hopefully the referee will have a good game and he'll let it flow.
How good is Louise Nimura-Hartig, Yvonne? Because I mean, I think she kicked 1-6 of Kerry's 2-8 in that aforementioned game in Parnell Park earlier in the year. So she's just one of these players, I guess, Clifford-esque in that you have to have a plan for her.
She's incredible. So she is, like, she's been doing it for years for Kerry, and this year's no different. It's just this year's it's gone insane altogether. I think she scored maybe 444 in the whole championship to date. As you said, she got 1-6 in the group game stages there against Meath. In the semi-final against Meath, 110, or was it 111, 110 from play. Just incredible stats. She's just shooting the lights out. She's an incredible player, and how Dublin plan for that, and what they put in place to try and curb that and curb her influence in the game is going to be crucial in how the game's decided. So
what do you think that'll be, Yvonne? Because they don't tend to go, like, they don't tend to double up with markers and stuff. What do you do with her?
Yeah, like I think it'll be important who they put marking her first of all. Like, is it going to be Leah Cafferty? Will they gamble bringing Martha Byrne back, or the young girl there in the corner, Niamh Crowley? She's just out of minor last year. I do think probably will end up being Leah, but I know they don't generally play a sweeper, but they will be dropping deep. They're definitely not going to leave that space in front for Louise. Like, as in, Mick's been around the game long enough. I know when we played them in 2017 with Cora, that she was definitely doubled down on those 2 or 3 around her at times. Now, it wasn't a sweeper as such, but there were girls dropping back in front, and they were aware of the threat. And I don't think it'll be any different with Louise. There's going to be a plan there in place for her on Sunday. It'll be up to, I suppose, the girls around Louise, the rest of the girls, the likes of Danielle and Hannah and those, to be getting on the ball to free her up. If the rest of the girls are effective, it will give Louise that space. It's just if the other girls aren't having an impact in the game, it will allow Dublin to drop and maybe double mark Louise.
It's funny, there's so many similar narratives from this to the men's game with the David Clifford stuff and how reliant they were. And look at, I suppose we all know how that turned out in the end. But again, similarly to the men's one, Dublin are less reliant on that one player. They have scorers all over the pitch, including coming up from the back.
Yeah, like, as in the Dublin forward line as a whole have been unbelievable all season. They've been putting up huge scores. Like, the bet was at Donegal by 15 points in the semi-final. They bet, it's important to say, they bet Cork by 12 points in the All-Ireland semi-final, and that's the same Cork team that overturned Kerry in the Munster final by 6 points. So they've incredible scores. Like, Cara Rowe, she's 5 goals so far in the championship. Hannah Tyrrell has 3 goals so far in the championship. Kate Sullivan has 5 goals. So, like, they do have the players around, and their half forward line is incredible as well. Like, Queevor and Kate in the half forward line, they're supplying the ball into them. So, as you said, there's threats all over the place for the Kerry or the Dublin forward line. So how Kerry counteract that will be important. But they have great defenders as well. So, you know, the likes of Koch and Kaylee Cronin, Ailish Lynch, they have really good backs as well. So how they match up is going to be really important.
How important, Yvonne, is that relationship? And you'll know this better than anyone, between goalkeeper and receiver as well when it comes to the kick out. We saw it in the men's final between Stephen Cluxton and Brian Howard. But, you know, for Abby Shields in the Dublin goal and for Ciara Butler for Kerry this weekend, how crucial is it to get those relationships absolutely spot on?
Yeah, look, I think that's really important. Just to go back to the semi-final against Mayo, I thought Kerry struggled on their kickouts when they were against the Breeze. What I was disappointed from a Kerry point of view was in the quarter-final against Meath, they played really well. So Kerry seemed to go in flashes in the first half and blow teams out of the water, but they've been letting teams creep back into the game in the second half, and that was evident in the quarter-final against Meath, where Meath actually, if the game went on another 5-10 minutes, I actually think Meath would have caught them. And similar in not so much in the semi-final, but similar, they let Mayo back into the game, so they did. And I think that was part of them struggling with their kickouts. What was disappointing was they didn't learn much from the quarter-final to the semi-final. So it was the exact same problems they faced in the semi-final. So I presume they would have worked on these now going into the final. That's 2 games in a row where they've struggled in a particular half and their kickouts, namely the second half. So I think that's definitely something Kerry management, I'm sure, would be aware of and would have been worked on. So Ciara's kickouts are going to be hugely important, especially because both teams do play a high press. So I do think Abby and Ciara, both at the Dublin Kerry goals, are going to be under pressure at different stages in the match, and how they've planned for that and how they react from that is absolutely crucial.
Yeah. What talk to us as well about a player that you would have come up against plenty of times, Sinead Ahern, and the influence that she has in a group that's like, I mean, there's a fair bit of transition obviously gone, and it's a very inexperienced group in some certain positions. But will you just talk to us about the importance of Sinead Ahern, number one, and what it is that's special about her as a player, as somebody that you've come up against?
Yeah, I think what you said there, like, is in Dublin have lost, I was looking the other day, I think they've lost 8 or 9 All-Stars in the last 2 or 3 years, which is outrageous. And they've something like 13, 14, 15 new players in. So having someone like Sinead Ahern, I think it's her 20th season playing senior football. So having someone like that in the group is immeasurable. Having someone that on the bench who could come in and see out a game for them, or even possibly change a game, is going to be unreal. So her leadership, as you said, in the dressing room, keeping things calm, talking to younger players, leadership, guiding them, just little nuggets that goes unseen to, I suppose, the general public. It's immeasurable. It's so brilliant to see her back in there. I do think while we mightn't see it as the general public watching the match, I think behind the scenes for Dublin it'll be credible. Like on the pitch, it goes without saying, a huge talent, but off the pitch, her quite demeanour and her leadership, and that is going to be unreal for Dublin.
I think you mentioned Niamh Crowley earlier as well, as someone who's kind of come in from minor, Yvonne, and Dublin have a couple of those younger players. Ailish Drought, I think, is another one who's kind of emerged during the league campaign earlier this year. How intimidating is it for a player like that to come into an All-Ireland final week? Because you'll have experienced it yourself before. It's just something different. The build-up is different. The parade is different. There's a lot of just little minor things, I guess, that are different about this week. So I guess, is it tough for those younger players to kind of keep the head, or maybe is it just the abandonment of youth, that maybe they'll be less nervous than the rest of the players?
Yeah, sometimes I think the abandonment youth is a great thing. It's the naivety not to be nervous, which is great sometimes. And I suppose both teams have players who played in an All-Ireland final. Dublin especially have girls who have won numerous All-Irelands over the last few years. So those senior players will be there to guide them and help them in that. And similar, Kerry have been in the All-Ireland final last year. So they've gone through, the majority of the players have been there, they've done the parades, they've seen the crowds and that. So I do think they will be able to be there to help the younger players through and give them a bit of words of wisdom or pat in the back or whatever needs to be done on the day. I also think the management teams will have curbed a lot of that, like in their pre-match routines and over the last 2 weeks, speaking about what's going to happen and what's going to play out and the visualisation of that. But I do think there's a certain thing about youth where, a lot of it is naivety and they go into it all guns blazing, and it's great where sometimes I think it's the older players it means a little bit more and the nerves could kick in there a little bit.
Yeah, a long time between drinks. Like, despite Kerry's amazing legacy in the competition, it's been so long since they've won the thing. And then I was reminded a little bit of our camogie build-up last week, where we had one of the Cork players saying that there had been a drought in Cork when they hadn't won it for a couple of years, and equating it to Waterford having never won the thing before. I kind of brought to mind the context of this game as well. But what's your sense then of, like, with everything in the mix that we've been discussing about who's going to get out on top?
Yeah, so it's 30 years since Kerry won their last All-Ireland, and actually an interesting fact is if they happen to win this one, currently they're top of the leaderboard with Cork on 11 All-Irelands each. So if they could win this one, they'll nip ahead as the team with the most All-Irelands. Dublin have the 5 All-Irelands over the last number of years. So what's my gut on what way it'll go? Look, I was looking at stats there last night before we come on, and I think it's going to come down to the midfield battles. Jennifer Dunn, I can't go without having a word for Jennifer Dunn. She's having an incredible season. Like, if Dublin win, she'll surely be Player of the Year. So herself and Ailish Dowd, super midfield. But then on the other hand, you've Lorraine Scanlon and Louise Galvin in midfield. So I think that battle in midfield is where it's going to be won or lost, because they're the ones that are going to get the supply into the Dublin forwards or Louise and the Kerry forwards or whatever it may be. I think the middle third there is where the game is going to be won and lost. Looking back at the All-Ireland finals the last few years, the losing team has, over the last 20 years, only 2 losing teams have scored more than over 12 points. So I do think it'll be midfield and defence get on top that'll win the game. And for me, I think Dublin may edge this. I think Mick's been around the block long enough. I think the loss of Sheaffer Shea for Kerry, and I do think he will come with a plan, Louise. I do see her having a good game, but I do see him coming with a plan for Louise. I see it being a really close contest, but I see the experience of Dublin and them winning the All-Ireland the last few years. And like they've only the last time they won it was 2020. It's only like there's lots of girls still involved. They've won all Ireland medals there. I think I can just see their experience getting them over the line.
All right. Well, you know exactly what it is, but all that is about. 4-time All-Ireland winner with Mayo, Yvonne Byrne. Thanks a million.
Thanks for having me on, guys.